You are incredibly good at a game. For most players, the game you play is the game you bought, but that's not good enough for you. Your teammates aren't as good as you. You are among the elites. You ascend the ladder for a competitive game and eventually you can be a pro. It's easy to say who's better simply because you can play against that other player and prove it. But what about in a cooperative game? Simple. You make it more challenging. You make it impossible. You turn that tide of enemies into an onslaught and challenge your death wish to a duel. This is the story of a small community of players who wanted to be the best in the world. They were willing to build an entire organization, develop custom mods, and build an outreach program that finds and recruits new players to the game, all in the name of turning a cooperative game competitive and proving no one is better. This is the story of Aqshy, a player who fell into the game and managed to redefine the entire experience. This is the story of the interpersonal tension, drama, and real-life personalities behind one of the least known, but most fascinating stories in community gaming today. This is the story of the Onslaught series. Vermintide is a cooperative game where you play with 3 other people and try to win against a flood of enemies. It's part of a genre that can be challenging to pin down. When people talk about Vermintide, they inevitably compare it to other games. It's kind of like Left 4 Dead, except with RPG elements. It's sort of like Mordau, except cooperative. It's similar to Deep Rock Galactic, but with more of a focus on combat. It's something like Killing Floor, except with level progression. As you would expect, it has built-in difficulty scaling from 1 to 5, Recruit to Cataclysm. You can work your way up until you're playing something pretty tough, the most harrowing experience in vanilla. There are even 3 different levels of Cataclysm for those true masochists out there. But for some people, that's just not hard enough. The developer, Fat Shark, released a video on April 1st, 2016, poking fun at how difficult the game is. In this video, they introduce a new difficulty called Death Wish Mode, something so hard that no one would ever want to play it. Of course, immediately, people wanted to play it, but it wasn't real, it was an April Fool's joke. That didn't stop anyone in a community filled with modders. The Death Wish mod was released, introducing significantly harder enemies that do more damage and take more damage. And boy, that sure was the most challenging way to play the game at the time. Of course, the thing about modders is they never create something halfway too insane and then stop and feel contentment, enjoying a nice meal and a drink while reminiscing on how they stopped at just the right point. That is when Onslaught mode was also introduced, which increases the difficulty of enemy spawn compositions. So there are more overall enemies, and they're more likely to be elite enemies instead of regular enemies. Boy, that's 2 very hard mods. I wonder which one is tougher. The answer is both at the same time. Death Wish Onslaught. More formidable enemies that hit harder, and there are more of them. You'll hear people say DWONS, including myself. And this is what they're talking about. Death Wish Onslaught. A group of mods that make the game significantly more challenging. And if these 2 mods aren't already spelling it out, there are even harder variations of DWONS. Of course there are. With the hardest being being Deathwitch Onslaught Cataclysm 3 Dutch Spice, or DWONS Cata 3 Dutch. There are two things here that are really important to understand this whole thing. First, these kinds of difficulties are fundamental. You might be sitting here going, well, that just sounds stupidly difficult. Why would anyone want to do that? And that's totally okay. But imagine now that you're playing with someone really good at the game. Is it fun to have someone ahead of you on the map all the time and everything's already dead? Is it fun to have a teammate of yours 3/4 of the way through the level while you're still fighting early enemies? Is it fun to feel like you're the slow one, or that you're not good enough at the game? I would say no, and it's not fun being the person on the other side either. It's not fun feeling like the game has no challenge. It's not fun feeling like the people you're playing with need to be faster or more familiar with the game. It's not fun losing or winning in this situation on either side. Having someplace where those extreme players can go is valuable. Second, the goal is a game mode that can't be beaten, but is beatable. It's not something so insanely over difficult that literally no one could beat it, but it's also something insanely hard that no one can beat yet. And then to beat it, to be one of the few who can achieve that level of skill. This is why these mods exist. The hard part is finding anyone else to play with. April 2019. Vermintide 2 has been out for a year. People have finally reached the skill necessary to truly be incredible at it. There's a small but very loyal core group of players playing DWONS. Still, the community isn't really growing. Partially because it's natural that only some minority of players will seek out the most challenging experiences in the game, but also because not many people even know about it. In fact, at one point, there's even a survey that shows only 5% of players on the Vermintide subreddit ever play on modded servers. To play DWONS, you have to choose to leave the vanilla experience, hunt down 2 different mods, and then find anyone else who's playing, because there are no official servers. There's no outreach. It's just peer-to-peer on Discord and Reddit. And if you're not in the right community, you might never find anyone. 2 outstanding players in the community came together one day and started talking about this problem. BioShift was one of the most prolific players at the time. He would regularly post videos of insane runs in the game, primarily true solos, a solo run without bots. Bio was well respected in the community. Isolator was another prolific high-end true solo player and modder, and one interested in vermin science, the community term for people who would dig into the numbers and figure out how the game worked. These 2 players realized that the issue was more than just how difficult the high-end gameplay is. It was about getting new people to know that higher difficulty gameplay exists in the first place. So they decided to start something.
So it was founded by me and a German called Isolator to begin with. And the original intention was for it to just be, because we're both just super competitive people, to have some competition, basically. See if we can turn Vermintide into a competitive platform. Which was the idea, was because we started with the idea of having a tournament, and then we quickly realized there's not actually enough competition for it to be a very interesting tournament. It would be like 2 teams. So we thought, well, we need to train people up. There needs to be a platform also to get people interested in being competitive in Vermintide. So we need to make it not just the Onslaught tournament series, but the Onslaught series that hosts lots of different kind of modded events.
Introducing the Onslaught series, an organization explicitly built for platforming modded difficulties competitively. Now you may be thinking, hey Em, this is a cooperative game. How can you make it competitive? That was answered years ago by the speedrunning community, who have long taken single-player and cooperative games and made a competition out of playing them. The Onslaught series simply took that to the next level. The The first event in the Onslaught series was the Onslaught Captains series, and is coincidentally something somewhat similar to the Wednesday Night Fights format that became popular in the fighting game community on the United States West Coast. Semi-frequently gathering, the Captains series would be a group of 4 players, 3 new to Onslaught players, and 1 captain. These captains would spend a few hours teaching these new players how Onslaught worked, how it compared to vanilla Vermintide, and what the best tactics were. Then they would all run 4 maps, and whoever got the furthest before dying would win. Points would be assigned for map completion, side objectives completed, and the number of attempts left. Each team had 3 tries to complete each map. The goal was to introduce new players who were interested in Onslaught, but maybe scared of jumping in solo or couldn't find other interested players, or maybe even had never heard of it but would be interested in a higher tier of difficulty, and bring them into a big social event where they could make friends and play this niche game mode, all in the name of making it easier for Bio and Ice to find people to play with. For a short time, this works. However, some things could be improved in the Onslaught series. First, its only outreach comes from the staff of the Onslaught series. They'll go play with people and invite them through word of mouth to play in the Captains series. They post once on Reddit for every event, but it's very mildly explained. Generally speaking, the marketing for the events, as it were, is very muted in tone. Essentially, while having the event was cool for the people who already liked it and provided a great stepping stone for their friends who were interested in it, it didn't really branch out to the larger community in the way it could have. This is when Winds of Magic, a DLC for Vermintide 2, releases, and with that release, it breaks the game. This is potentially one of the most poorly received DLCs of any game. It's astonishing how much people hated this DLC. Winds of Magic cost $20, which might not sound like it's that expensive until you realize that Vermintide 2 cost $30 and had been on sale the week prior to release for only $7. And now you've got this DLC that costs 3 times the price of your base game. Okay, not such a big deal if there's a lot of content. But Winds brought 1 map, 1 weapon for each character, added a new enemy race, the Beastmen, and reintroduced the Cataclysm difficulty from Vermintide 1, which is slightly more challenging but has no additional rewards. Altogether, it felt like Fat Shark was overcharging their fanbase, and it caused the developer to completely change their entire monetization strategy in response. This was also when Ice released a mod called Beastmen Loader. You don't need to know a lot about this mod yet, but remember it, because it will be important later. All you need to know is that it is considered a must-have mod that fixes some issues with the Beastmen. There were lots of issues with the Beastmen. They are still the least liked enemy type, and they are considered to be janky. The description most used is, they seem unfinished. This creates an unfortunate situation for the Onslaught series. Their participation numbers were already beginning to drop simply due to the outreach flaws in their systems. Now, you had vast amounts of the community merely opting out because of the broken Beastmen and the overpriced DLC that locks the highest difficulty behind a paywall. Essentially, you now have to convince someone not only to hunt down these mods and leave vanilla Vermintide, which was already difficult to achieve, but also you've got to ask them to pay $20 for the ability to do so. The player base was being divided and segmented into smaller subcommunities of an already very small subcommunity. It's not surprising that the Onslaught Captain series would be placed on indefinite hold only a few months later, and no further events would be held. 2020 2020 comes along. It's been about 6 months since the last Onslaught series event. The world has been gripped by geopolitical events that will change the face of the planet. Australian bushfires, a fiercely divisive United States presidential election campaign, protests erupting around the world, and an increasingly worrying reality of a global pandemic. Sports are postponed or canceled. The Olympics won't happen that year. The stock market tanks. And murder hornets is a term that gains horrifying significance. We all needed a little entertainment. In this environment, we meet someone critical to this story. Aqshy is today the community manager for Fatshark, the developer of Vermintide. In July 2020, Aqshy went by the name Aqshy and was just another community member.
My name is Aqshy. I'm a community manager for Fatshark Games, but from 2019, I think, to about mid-2021, I was known as Aqshy, and I was a tournament organizer for Onslaught series.
She had found Vermintide on console and became a massive fan of the game, eventually taking on a position as a Reddit moderator for r/Vermintide.
You know, some people can pick up and play a video game, and I'm not one of those people. I have to really work at it. And Vermintide was really the first game that I was like, I'm actually decent at this. I'm not like my friends aren't hard carrying me or anything like that. And I stayed and they moved on to other stuff, and I kind of got stuck.
It was here that Aqshy would see a video of BioShift playing on modded difficulties and would get involved in the Onslaught series. Aqshy quickly admits that she wasn't the best at playing the game. Still, she enjoyed watching it and playing it in a way comparable to how people enjoy esports tournaments. There's nothing quite like seeing someone genuinely excellent at the game doing something novel and expert, and then going into the game and trying to do the same thing. Watching Bio complete one of the hardest difficulty challenges and doing it so easily inspired her to want to see more. As with any community, there are rivalries. I'm better than you, you're better than him, he's better than me, so who's the best? Are you for Team Europe or Team USA?
Be like, we know how to play, and I know how to play better than you, or my way is this way, and therefore, and then spit numbers at each other. I remember saying to Ice, I'm kind of tired of it. Wouldn't it be great if we just had this format where you guys could throw down and just solve the problem? We just kind of got our Discord call one day and just said, hey, okay, now's the time. How do we frame this? And I pitched it to Bio, and Bio went, yeah, sounds good.
All these people are stuck inside, playing Vermintide, with no way of saying who's truly the best, whose tactics are the smartest, whose character builds are the strongest. Aqshy played with Isolator, the co-founder of the Onslaught series, and they became fast friends. It didn't take long for Aqshy to put her enterprising mind to the problem and devise a solution. During a gaming session with Isolator, they came up with a series of rules for a tournament.
Me and Aqshy were talking, and when we came up with the idea to probably make a tournament, she mentioned that it would be cool to have a tournament, and then we kind of developed it on that.
Think your strats are the best? Prove it. Think your team can do it faster? Prove it. Want to show off to the world? Do it. Aqshy put together easy-to-understand rules, promoted the event on Reddit, Discord, Tumblr, and anywhere else she could, and most importantly, provided prizes. Yes, I know, it's all for the love of the game, but also the love of sweet, sweet swag. Winners in this tournament would receive their choice of in-game cosmetics, DLC keys, Discord Nitro, or a printed copy of the Heroes Fanbook. Aqshy headed up a community collaboration of fan artists, fanfic writers, video game photographers, lore experts, and meta theorists, and put together a clean, professional, printed, and online anthology of works from the community. All of this shoutcasted by the original modder who created Onslaught, and one of the most prominent content creators in the Vermintide space.
Happy to be here. Yeah, this is awesome.
This was only a modest success, but it still fueled Aqshy's desire to make it more extraordinary. And most valuably, it showed that there was a desire amongst the community for this kind of content, and a path that could be cleared if only the obstacles could be identified. First, 3 tiers of competition. More tiers allowed for more players in different skill ranks. So rather than simply the best of the best, you could also have the best of the rest playing. This also addressed an issue from the first tournament, namely that multiple teams tied for first. The game wasn't hard enough, so multiple teams cleared the levels and achieved identical scores. In a tournament setting where the goal is to compete to prove you're the best, tying doesn't really solve the problem. So by introducing higher tiers, the Onslaught series could also introduce a more significant difficulty that was more likely to cause failures and provide an opportunity for standouts and drama. Additionally, better prizes. Who doesn't love better stuff? By connecting with Fat Shark directly, Aqshy was able to leverage several premium content codes for winners and runners-up in the tournament, meaning that now, winning a tier might net you a couple $100 worth of vouchers, DLC, games, and even Death Wish brand coffee. A good brand integration if I've ever seen one. In fact, it's so good that I recommend clicking the link in the description to try out the bold, full-bodied yet smooth and flavorful brew that will awaken your taste buds with an extra kick of caffeine to ignite your attitude. Finally, Aqshy instituted a more structured broadcast, specific time slots for runs, streams from the teams themselves, and the shoutcasters are back to move between the runs and provide live commentary in a much more viewer-friendly format. The seed of a successful organized event had been planted. What could possibly go wrong? The third Onslaught Series tournament was held on November 14th, 2020. By all accounts, no one expected anything astounding. The teams mainly were known players, and the shoutcasters had done this a few times and worked to improve their flow. Even the Captain Series had returned due to the community's positive reaction to the tournaments. Once again, we had top-level players going out and recruiting interesting new players and introducing them to the Onslaught series. Up to win is almost $1,000 in cash and prizes, including gift cards and games. Everyone is very excited, as only some people who want to play in the tournament will already have a team to play with. The Onslaught team uses a looking for group chat on Discord where people can find additional members. One of those people is a player by the name of Combine. Combine lets the teams know that he is looking for a group. Any tier, any region. Precisely the kind of player that makes an event organizer's job even easier. First, one player is added, then a duo, then one player drops out and another is added. Team Combine is finalized, consisting of 2 players who were entirely new to Onslaught, and a team dynamic where only 2 players had previously spoken to each other. There's some mild bantering. The team talks strategy and how they've built a good working relationship for practice, and then the tournament begins. While there are half a dozen games going on, they all slowly fade away as the shoutcasters realize something strange is happening.
Welcome to the stream, guys. My name is Aqshy TV. This is the beginning of the Death Wish Onslaught Tournament Season 3. So this is Combines right up here. Okay. Ooh, and they're taking on some Chaos Warrior patrols.
Yep.
I want to watch this. This will be good. Yeah, Combine is an incredibly strong player. So I'm gonna take a look here at Combine here. Combine was doing another one of those true solos. He was able
to enjoying soloing this event.
Oh, triple kill with the Mauler overhead. Oh yeah. Triple kill with the Mauler overhead.
Out there before they make it here.
What a shot. That's a completion. A crazy completion for Combine.
Combine's enjoying true soloing this event for his team.
That's hilarious. Wow.
Casually walking through, don't mind me. the straight is through soloing once more in the engines.
Oh no.
He actually got his entire team up, so...
Wrist of titanium.
He is through soloing this event like a champ.
That's insane. Multiple blasters.
Nice snipe with wow. As well to get the conservative. Not quite on the second one. So,
Combine shots are ridiculous.
Combine was already 2-man standing. It's,
we missed that.
Up, so things went wrong again. So it should be Combine just running around in circles.
That boat is looking maybe 15 seconds away.
Yep, gonna go for a revive on the Grail Knight. Just abusing this permanent stealth.
You might have one.
There's a stealth going through.
Right,
the boat is there. Going straight for the Bridge of Shadows. With the Grail Knight dead.
Have a nice day.
Wow, GG.
True soloing skills here. Yeah, 140 specials from the Combine. That's some longbow skills here.
So that is Team Combine with a completion. 4 maps completion with about 35 minutes to spare. Cat of 1 tier, 35 minutes to spare. That's a completion on them. Congratulations, you played out of your mind.
Combine manages one of the game's most difficult achievements, and manages to achieve it in the least favorable conditions, essentially soloing the entire 4-map Tier 2 tournament bracket with only a single retry. He does this while carrying a team of new players who, very simply, cannot keep up, constantly reviving downed players while also killing all the bosses and elites in a run that honestly makes the game look easy. Combine also does this while abusing a mechanic that was simply broken at this level of play, allowing his class, Shade, to stay invisible forever. The shoutcasters cheer and the audience loves it. Combine, who before the event joked that he counted as at least 2 players, turned out to count for 4, and began joking that at the next tournament, he'll play it as a speed run. Prizes are handed out. Externally, everyone looks happy with the results of the tournament. Internally, tension and strife begin to build amongst the Onslaught staff. A single player managed to nearly solo hard carry an entire tournament tier. The tournament is broken. Conversations begin immediately inside the organization. How will events move forward? The next tournament is postponed for 3 months, and 2 camps are set up in the Onslaught staff. On one side, Aqshy, who believes that the only course of action is to ban the use of the abusable character entirely. While it's unfortunate, you can't be running a tournament where the only way to play is this broken class, especially not with cash prizes on the line. No one wants to watch a tournament where the question is simply, who will abuse the mechanics the hardest? On the other side is Isolator, who begins to float the idea that Onslaught should have its own mod. Remember, Isolator is a modder. At this point, he's introduced several quality of life mods that are very popular in the community, and a difficulty modifier called Onslaught Plus. Isolator is an interesting player. He revels in novelty. He wants to experience new things, and he wants to play the game in a very high skill way. But if vanilla is too easy, why stop at only making it a little harder? With thousands of hours in CSGO, Left 4 Dead, and Vermintide 2, Ice has played this game before. Wouldn't it be novel to introduce some significant systemic changes to the game?
I kind of wanted to make the game different as I was approaching with class balance.
After all, some classes are boring, and some weapons are bland. I invite you to take a moment and consider how you would balance a game. Let's take something trendy, like Minecraft. This cooperative adventure has successfully birthed competitive speedruns to the point that cheating at them is worth 31 million subscribers. Imagine then that in a new patch, a specific speedrunning tactic is introduced that allows any reasonably competent first player to not only set new records, but shatter previous world records. No longer is skill the determining factor, and all other strategies are immediately made obsolete. However, there is no competition, as everyone sets exactly the same time. You can't improve it. Using this tactic, you will always set the fastest time, tied with everyone else. Let's say, for this example's sake, that this is possible because due to a bug, the gold pickaxe can hit a dirt block twice as fast as any other pickaxe. In regular play, this might never be noticed at all. While dirt is everywhere in Minecraft, most players will use a shovel, as it is the fastest way to mine dirt. Similarly, players will not use the gold pickaxe over diamond or iron pickaxes because it has lower durability and is slower for mining higher level blocks. The gold pickaxe dirt doubling issue is a non-issue for almost every player, except that at very high skill levels. It is the method used to achieve this world record shattering speedrun. How do you address this issue as the speedrunning community? Do you wait for Mojang to fix the issue? Again, most players don't experience it, so it will likely never be corrected, or at least sit so low on priorities that the team may never notice it. You could ban the use of the gold pickaxe, but then some people prefer the gold pickaxe, and they've used it on other strategies and they really like how it looks. The analogy breaks down a little bit there, but give it some leeway. Or you could change the issue yourself with a mod. However, what is the best way to go about that? Should you lower the damage that the gold pickaxe does to dirt? Lower the block health of the dirt block. Buff the health of all non-dirt blocks. Remove dirt entirely? Lowering the gold pickaxe's dirt damage would hurt how it's used against other blocks, essentially being the same as a ban. Reducing dirt block health makes shovels exceptionally overpowered now, makes all pickaxes better at mining dirt, and leaves gold still as a faster way to mine dirt. Buffing dirt health, well, that obviously makes all non-gold, non-dirt interactions slower, essentially presenting as a nerf for every tool. Zero dirt is not really an ideal way to play either. Indeed, few players actively use dirt in their buildings, but it is nonetheless an integral part of playing the game. There are many ways to balance this issue, some more drastic than others, some with far-reaching implications. And people are flawed in that they have their own opinions, so not everyone will readily agree. Between Aqshy, BioShift, Isolator, and the rest of the staff, no one can come up with a palatable way to balance the game. There's no agreement, and arguments happen as Isolator sets himself apart. His way of balancing would be correct here, or at least that's what he thinks. And he's the event co-founder, so he's not going to back down. He is absolutely confident that his way is the right way. Everyone else disagrees with him. Aqshy, tired of the bickering, makes an executive decision. Shade is banned.
We banned Shade. We instituted a Shade ban. And that was a whole other thing because it caused a little bit of a fuss because some people were like, why did you ban this whole character? And other people were like, yeah, you finally banned Shade. But Combine is a very talented player, and so played a very talented Shade and just wiped the floor with everyone. And so it's always kind of funny because sometimes people will kind of be like, oh, well, this is the group that banned Shade for a couple seasons, and Combine will be like,
Everyone knows that the class is broken. It's obvious, and clearly something needs to be done. Still, not everyone agrees with banning the class. Not everyone agrees with fixing it either. And Aqshy's decision moves her into the role of the team's decider and quasi-sole leader. On the surface, the next several months are going as expected. 2 more tournaments are held, this time with the Shade class banned. Most people accept it, but there's definitely some dissent. An entire class is simply not eligible, and a minority of people aren't very happy about that. Aqshy continued to build the community and had some significant success. She created the Vermintide Community Festival, a day of streamed events, prizes and interviews with developers and key community members. There are roundtable discussions about maps and strategies, previews of upcoming mods, and gameplay from some of the best players. All of this is hosted on the new Onslaught platform, Fight the Tide, a proprietary Twitch channel created to allow the community to directly support the tournament with bits, subscriptions, and other monetary donations, lessening the burden placed directly on Aqshy's shoulders as the primary prize donor. This is on top of a continuing and tighter integration with the developer, Fatshark, who provided significant prizes and exposure. The Onslaught tournament was highlighted directly by Fatshark on Steam and in the game's launcher. They offered up one of the rarest cosmetics in Vermintide, the impossible to get Eternal Serpent frame that changes the way the character portrait looks, which was only available as a prize directly from Fatshark and nowhere else. Another fan book, Journeys, was released as well, and overall it appears that the Onslaught tournament is smoothly sailing along. The community is engaged and excited, and relationships with the developer have never been stronger. Underneath the calm facade, however, the Onslaught staff is filled with conflict. It is May of 2021. Shade has been banned for 8 months, and the Onslaught series has yet to make any clear steps forward in resolving the issues in the tournament surrounding this broken class. Isolator, however, has been active. He has been working on a new mod, one he's calling his Class Balance mod, designed, as its name suggests, to bring balance to the classes that he feels are overpowered, but also with his own flair. Mild changes, at first, just little things that make the game more interesting for someone with 6,000 hours in it. There are some discrepancies here, but it seems clear that class balance was initially intended, at least by Ice, to solve the tournament's problems. He certainly felt that way, which motivated him to make this mod.
I created the first balance mod. It was definitely first intended.
The conversations behind the scenes, however, had stayed the same. What mechanics would be balanced? How would they be balanced? And should they even be balanced? None of this discussion had changed over the months. It was becoming a tired argument, and it's possible that the teams would have argued into a stalemate forever if the following big news had not happened. Fatshark released its newest class, called the Sister of the Thorn, and guess what? It was completely broken. The time for discussion was over. There needed to be a solution. The tournaments couldn't simply ban multiple classes. It was bad enough banning one, but more? What would they do in the future? Continue to ban entire classes after the next team combine? What if someone figures out a new golden pickaxe and utilizes it so that some previously safe class is also now broken? No. The time for bans was over. Luckily, Ice already had a mod ready to go. There's just one problem. It's too extreme.
I do remember that there was a lot of tension around this. I do know that Shade and how she would be balanced was the big main of contention. They couldn't decide how to balance Shade. And it became kind of a sore spot in the staff.
We never wanted to ban anything. That was more of like a short-term solution because we couldn't decide on something because of this disagreement we had. Just have one very simple change instead of banning an entire character. It was really only one small component of this character that was making it so powerful. And most of us were just happy with just banning this one perk that was doing that, and then one person, it was Ice, who wanted to change her completely, and no one else wanted that, but he wouldn't let it go. So
I think it's because everyone has a different way of seeing how a fix should go. And that's kind of the problem with community created mods. You know, fixes can be great or they can be completely off the wall. Neither is more right than the other. How do you make a decision on that?
It's already hard to convince people to play modded realm. It's now even gonna be harder to convince them to try a balance mod that's basically changed everything they know. Compared to tournament balance, class balance like changed like 90% of the stuff compared to like the official game. And everybody coming from official game, even though some people may have more hours in modded than official, but everybody's still coming from official game. So like it's way less familiar for most of the player in the community.
Class balance doesn't just slightly tweak a few numbers and make characters fall in line with each other. It is essentially a partial conversion mod, changing almost every single aspect from the game, from how weapons work to how the core gameplay loop itself operates, to enemy composition changes that alter the entire purpose of fights. A perfect example is the Moonfire bow, a weapon that in the base game functions like a bow, but in class balance has been reworked into a railgun. One tournament player I interviewed said, "I think it would be hard to exaggerate the scope, extent, and the arbitrariness of the changes. For all intents and purposes, it is its own game." The Onslaught team didn't feel they had a choice. Class balance could not be their official mod. Ice was rejected, and as we've established previously, he truly believes that his path forward is the best, and he came up with a rather novel solution. See, every player in these tournaments already used one of Ice's mods, Beastmen Loader, one of his first and most prolific mods. Beastmen Loader does precisely what it says it does and allows maps to load Beastmen properly. Since the tournament wouldn't make class balance their official mod, Ice felt that he had a back door. He could force his changes by instituting them into Beastmen Loader. He could simply force everyone to accept his ideas, regardless of what the Onslaught organization intended.
Well, the idea was basically in the beginning to basically force people to in the tournament to use the balance mod to make sure they use it. And because Beastman Loader had to be used, because otherwise the game would crash with some mods, it would have been an opportunity to like patch it in a few days before and then patch it out afterwards.
But you did intend on doing that at one point.
Yeah, definitely. I thought about it.
Beastman Loader was kind of integral to prevent some crashes. I felt that was not an appropriate move because it would be enforcing something that we hadn't agreed upon. We all are very close to our ideas, and sometimes, you know, we want to do what's best for what we think is good for the tournament and this thing we've created. So I could see, you know, why that could be, you know, a solution he might have wanted to pursue. But I remember being very not keen on that idea.
How seriously he intended to do this, whether or not it was merely an idle threat or speculative bluster and frustration, Aqshy responded immediately and viscerally. She gave Ice an ultimatum. Ice could take over the Onslaught tournament. He could run everything. He could control the mod, the Twitch, the scheduling, the marketing, and the event entirely. Or he could leave. It was Aqshy or Ice.
That sounds like something I would do. That sounds like something I would do.
It was definitely a discussion me and Aqshy had. I kind of had my idea how the tournament should look like. I obviously also founded it. Co-founded the tournament. I kind of wanted to like make the game different as I was approaching with class balance, but yeah, it wasn't the idea of the other guys. They didn't want to follow the path I wanted to. Obviously, they didn't really follow my vision. My vision was just different from what I wanted to do.
Ice is not malicious, but he is headstrong, stubborn, and abrasive. The most common description of him is difficult, and very few consider him friendly. He has a reputation for arguing, a reputation he self-affirms.
I like to argue.
But lands him with an aura in the community as someone who doesn't listen. And if you provide any feedback, he will simply argue you down. After pouring through years of Discord messages, while he's certainly still the same person, I believe he's calmed down, become more politic. But at the time, he was undoubtedly a firebrand, and he had no problem telling people why they were wrong. I believe wholeheartedly that Ice wanted what was best for the tournament. However, his vision for that tournament was one of experimentation and novelty, which would eventually push his version of DWONS into its own entirely separate entity, much as it is today. At the time, however, he was Aqshy's friend, which was a much bigger deal.
You know, it did kind of drive a little bit of a wedge between us, and, you know, he valued having a friend more than having sole ownership of the event.
Ice releases class balance as a separate mod. He does not force any changes to the Beastman loader, and he leaves the Onslaught team. Officially, he takes a hiatus from his tournament organizer duties to, quote, concentrate on refining his mod. However, he doesn't focus on the mod. He leaves Vermintide entirely. He says he grew tired of it and felt he needed a break. He plays Call of Duty Warzone instead, but he keeps his friend as his friend. The issue of the tournament is still a problem, however. Even in its very different state, class balance is the only game in town. Aqshy agrees to open up the discussion to the community regarding using class balance during the next tournament. As might be expected, the reaction was brutal. While many people in the community seem to agree that a mod is necessary, and even praise class balance for some of its changes, it is universally panned for going too far, being too extreme, arbitrary, and inconsistent. Even the original Onslaught modder and one of their current shoutcasters, Grimalact, gives a measured yet stern disapproval. Many cite Isolator's unwillingness to compromise and his unwavering sense of correctness. Even in the face of these complaints, we see his motivations. Different first. Better, maybe. Internally, the team comes to a decision. Finally, there will be a tournament rebalance mod. One of the interesting side quests that Fat Shark delved into on their Vermintide journey was an attempt to legitimize and increase the presence of their mod scene. Mods extend the lives of games and increase sales. Skyrim, The Sims, Minecraft, Stardew Valley. All games that owe their modding communities a considerable debt for growing sales. There is an argument to be made that Steam's success and Valve's wealth are entirely owed to the modding community's fervor for mods that generated huge amounts of revenue, like Dota, Counter-Strike, and Team Fortress. Considering that a game like Left 4 Dead 2 still has 25,000 players a day, nearly a decade and a half after release, thanks to mods and modders, it's not surprising that a game like Vermintide would hope to tap into that life-extending and sales-extending community. Their attempt to do so was unfortunately lacking. Still, it was a fascinating diversion that is tangentially related to our core story and provides some compelling flavor towards the motivations of some of the individuals. For background on this, I spoke with developers from Fat Shark, who asked that I maintain their anonymity. In 2018, Fat Shark announced their intention to make modding support a significant component in their design philosophy, including creating and releasing the Vermintide mod framework, to provide mod creators with pre-built and reusable components that would lower the threshold for mod creation. They tasked technical director Robin Hagblom with spearheading and designing this system, allowing mods to be in the game. Similar to how balancing works, what is a good mod is a question with many different answers, and that's still only one slice of the bigger overall question. What mods do we allow in our game? Whitelisting a mod that allows players to cheat or grief non-mod players is the immediately obvious concern with a completely open arms mod inclusion policy. Fatshark came up with a three-pronged approach. First, vanilla unmodded gameplay would be considered official. Second, you could play in modded realm, which allowed any mod at any time. Cheat mods, data mined unreleased features, major changes to the game, anything goes. However, in modded, you did not gain in-game rewards such as experience, cosmetics, or character progression. Third was Sanctioned Mods, a blended approach where Fatshark would approve or whitelist a mod for use on official servers. These mods had to be quality of life mods. Think cutscene skip mods, different crosshairs, UI tweaks, timers, basic useful functionality that Fatshark either couldn't work on due to time constraints, features that Fatshark weren't sure players even wanted, or things that just didn't make sense to put into the game for everyone, but were still valuable. The process to be sanctioned was reasonably straightforward. If you were a modder, you could apply to be sanctioned by posting your mod on the Steam Workshop, and then requesting sanctioning. Additionally, Fatshark could simply choose your mod from the workshop, usually based on popularity. The more likes, the more likely a mod could be sanctioned. Once a mod was submitted for sanctioning, it would be added to a list. Then, Robin, the game director, and some designers would sit in a meeting and discuss whether or not each mod in the list fit the game and their vision. If approved, Fatshark would reach back out to the modder and request the source code. Hey, we really liked your pink crosshair mod. Can you upload the source code so we can verify that it's not a Bitcoin miner? That kind of thing. The modder uploads the code, Fatshark reviews it, compiles it, signs it cryptographically, and sends it back to the modder. The modder then replaces their old mod with the new signed mod, and Fatshark adds it to their sanctioned mods list. Now you can play that mod on official servers, gaining experience while being super cool. As I described this, perhaps you noticed a few weak points. First, it's very cumbersome. There are a lot of moving parts for only a little output. Secondly, and more detrimentally, it demands the time of a lot of people. Several developers have to be involved in multiple steps: finding the mods, reviewing the mods for inclusion, reviewing the code, compiling and returning the approved mod, and then adding the updated mod to their whitelist. Fatshark is not a large company. It has between 100 and 200 employees, so everyone wears many hats, and the Sanctioned Mods program got deprioritized very quickly. Not only did it take up a lot of time from a lot of people, but those people got busier working on other things. Most notably, the sequel to Vermintide 2, Darktide, began production. Those game designers and directors are now moving over to work on this new property. The old one just isn't their problem anymore. This was especially true for Robin, who moved on to become the technical director for Darktide. However, as the primary motivator behind the mod push, he did continue to be involved in the Vermintide 2 Sanctioned Mods program, quickly becoming the only developer handling the entire program. He alone would find, vet, review, compile, and approve mods. And then he left Fatshark for another company. On the other side, most games have their most significant momentum right after release, so modders were slowing down. The modder bought the game, played it, made a mod, and then left the game to play something else entirely, and now they're not making mods for Vermintide anymore. So you had fewer mods being made, fewer mods being submitted, and fewer mods that would qualify for sanctioning. Things decelerated on both sides. And so, after about 5 months, the Sanctioned Mods program was essentially dead. However, the deceleration was one of many reasons that Sanctioned Mods died. There were significant problems with the program and internal campaigns to end it. Those staff who were against sanctioning believed this process was a bad experience for players, modders, and developers. When a new patch would be released by Fatshark, the mods would break. This is common, but that would put pressure on the modders to immediately update their mods. This isn't fair for the modders, especially those who have moved beyond Vermintide and are no longer maintaining those mods. The experience is also bad for the player, because they get used to a mod, and then that mod stops working. This is not a good experience, especially if they've come to rely on the mod to play the game. Mods also mean there's less pressure on the developers to add the product internally. After all, why replicate effort if there's a sanctioned mod that fixes the problem already? However, this does not reach console players who do not have access to mods. Instead, these staff members would see Fatshark take the concepts of the mods and replicate them internally. This provides Fatshark with more control, makes them available to everyone on desktop and console, and ensures that the feature is supported across patches. That's not to say that mods don't have value to Fatshark, however. They provide proof of concept and proof of implementation. A modder might come up with some very clever idea that many users like, and now the developers can prioritize adding it to the game. Or a mod might get popular and prove that a feature that the developers have simultaneously ideated and previously considered and determined might be unpopular is actually very popular, and they can reprioritize it higher. An example of this might be the Player List Plus mod, which added more information to the tab screen, which had big empty spaces. This was already intended for that exact same information, but Fatshark needed more time to add it. When a mod came along that did that same thing and was popular, the developers could show that the time spent on that feature would be popular with the community. Additionally, Fatshark still sanctions some mods, like the Korean chat mod, which they could not do internally, but helps a significant portion of their player base without requiring continuous maintenance and does not affect gameplay. However, none of this was relayed to the community, ever, even today. As far as I know, I am the first person to ever say these words publicly. It should have been relayed, because unfortunately, what happened was that the modding scene instead felt uncertain. What was a good mod? Is my mod not as good as that other mod that was sanctioned? Is sanctioning mods dead, and why? Does Fatshark no longer support the modding community? For some modders, it's a bigger hit. Modders like Isolator believe that their mods are integral to the experience of the game. The sanctioning process made some community members believe that if their mod was good enough, their mod might be in the game one day. This was exacerbated when the second Big Balance beta was released in July of 2020, when the Onslaught series was returning under Aqshy's force of personality and the creation of the tournament. The second BBB is somewhat notorious amongst modders because it appeared to take a balancing mod directly from the modding community and integrate it into the game wholesale. The code written by these modders was in the game. Employees at Fatshark say that the company does not consider mods when developing, and they do not cater to the community's balancing requests. Designers will acknowledge that mods exist, and they do use them to determine what features players want, but Fatshark's coding implementation is claimed to be entirely white room, as in they start from scratch. Further, more extreme mods like Onslaught are not a source of balancing priorities. Game design is holistic and interconnected, so an overpowered character that exists in a vacuum is ultimately unimportant without the context of the game, other classes, and enemies. A mod like Onslaught or Death Witch, which changes the number of enemies and their difficulty, changes the context of how overpowered something is. A good example is an artifact staff that in the base game is not very good because there are not a lot of enemies. But if you increase the number of enemies, it scales very well and can become very overpowered. But only in that specific condition. So for Fatshark, the fact that Onslaught series would ban a character is not important to their balancing philosophy. But modders said to me that the BBB had code bugs in the mod and the final release, which is difficult to imagine being accidentally replicated. Plus, Fatshark straight up said they took it from the modders in a Steam announcement. To the modding community, in light of the lack of information from Fatshark, it is undeniable that many thought if they made popular mods, their work could be added to the game. It had happened before. Modders had made significant changes to the balancing of the game, and now that modder's code was in the game. And if they could do it, so could anyone. As the months went by, the years went by, without any word from Fat Shark, without any new sanctioned mods, without any communication, the modders began to feel like they had to take things into their own hands because Fat Shark was never going to fix things. For someone like the Onslaught series staff, that meant they knew they had to make their own mod. Ice's mod did not receive as much love and affection amongst the community as he had hoped, and many of the most vocal detractors were also modders. People who play mods will inevitably include those who make mods, and one of those was a modder named Core. Core had started working on his own mod to bring some of the overperforming skills and characters back in line with the rest of the game. Some of his changes were significant, including a major divergence that buffed the Slayer class. Still, on the whole, this mod was very close to vanilla. Over time, it has been refined to be even closer, even removing those exciting concepts from the Slayer class to be as close to expectations for a player coming from official to modded. Core offered his mod to the Tourney team as a replacement for Ice's class balance, and the team accepted. At this point, Isolator is no longer part of the tournament that he helped found. Neither is his mod used, nor is he part of the team. A new team entirely is composed of several modders. Coincidentally, 5 of the 6 new balance team members were also the same modders whose balance choices were added to the game by Fat Shark in the second BBB. Pershing, Sleazy Rats, Core, Incandescent, Blow Blow, and Random Words, with Aqshy overseeing but providing only top-level feedback on balancing choices. Ironically, these same balance team members were also some of Ice's most vocal detractors on his class balance mod. They were willing to put their money where their mouth was and step up to the plate to ensure it was done correctly. The community quickly accepts this Tourney balance mod, and today it is the most popular balancing mod in the game. Finally, this provided the Onslaught series with the ability to change overperforming classes. Team Combine no more. Shade could be unbanned, and there would be no need to ban the new Sister of the Thorn class. While balancing is more complicated, and people will disagree, it's more rewarding and better than just banning an entire class. With the advent of the Tourney balance mod, the Onslaught series was ready for the future. With the reinvigoration of the tournament following the addition of the Tourney mod, the Captain series also received a significant revamping. Previously, you would have 3 hours to meet with your captain, get a quick rundown, and then go wild in a live map that you would almost certainly fail at. While effective for weeding out innate skill, a more cohesive structure was developed that more closely mirrors the tournament's format. Players are divided into 4-player teams and given 2 weeks to practice regularly with their captain. This is a clearly superior format change, one the community seems to have embraced wholeheartedly, and it's been successful for the past year. If you join the Onslaught series Discord, this is the format you'll experience as a new player, and it's frankly more inviting. Isolator is also back in Vermintide, and he's updating his class balance mod. In fact, he held a class balance tourney in August of 2020, though it could have been more successful. There were as many players as there were prizes, and only 1 team actively competed on the first day. His unbending standards are on full display, however. He required all participants to download his Mod Checker mod, which would automatically check if you had any mods he disapproved of, and if so, refuse to load the game. There isn't a rivalry, however. For most players, it boils down to preference. Some people like tourney balance, and some people like class balance. And I am happy for people to play whatever they like. Among most modded players, if you ask someone to play a game, they will assume you want to play tourney. You have to specify that you'd like to play class balance. Aqshy has also left the Onslaught team, but for slightly different reasons. In Q4 of 2021, Aqshy was hired by Fat Shark to become a community manager. It makes perfect sense. She built an entire organization's outreach program and helped bolster a small sub-community into the default way to play a modded game. However, this has had some ramifications for the Onslaught series, as you might imagine. Aqshy decided to make the entire staff more egalitarian, flattening the hierarchy so that, in theory, no one person is more important than the other. It's a committee now, with people stepping in to take volunteer roles without any clear project manager delivering instructions. That has its drawbacks, as anyone who's tried to ask volunteers to do free work can attest. Still, it certainly does put the future of the event and the organization as a whole in the hands of the people. You could be the person who steps in and takes a significant role in the Onslaught series. Ultimately, whether the series and tournament survive into the future of Darktide and beyond will be decided by the people who play it instead of the force of a single person's personality. Neither Aqshy's endless energy nor Ice's singular vision will be there to lead them, and I'm fascinated to see where things lead in that vacuum. I also have some criticism that the series needs to consider for its future. Currently, the Captain series is too team dependent. Remember, the whole idea behind this substantial, multi-year expenditure of effort was to increase the size of the community precisely because it is hard to find people to play with. I know that if I go and play a game of DWONS, I'm going to know absolutely nobody. So I need someone to play with me. I need help to learn the game and meet people because I don't know anyone. But suppose I join the Captain series. In that case, I'll never be encouraged by the format to meet anyone. I just play with my team. And if someone in my group decides to stop playing Vermintide, I no longer have a team. I think the Captain series could benefit a lot from hosting social events, perhaps a one-map mixer where players compete with various groups, switching quickly after each map, like speed dating for dwarves. Additionally, Onslaught has become more insular and closeted without someone marketing-minded such as Aqshy. It's hard to find any information about the community. Most new players are only arriving because Aqshy, the community manager for Fat Shark, has convinced Fat Shark to sometimes include the tournaments in their Steam updates. It's very concerning that the only person doing publicity for this event, as it reaches this very delicate time, is the person who was doing it before and shouldn't be doing it now. And Aqshy has been very particular about separating herself from this tournament event. She is careful not to appear conflicted or biased. After giving up community control to this committee, she resigned from it. Today, if you see her in their Discord, she's just hitting rats again. Just recently, the Onslaught series hosted another tournament. By all accounts, it was a great success. Still, it highlighted problems that a committee-based leadership program can't efficiently address. For example, it had a charity aspect, and Fat Shark even provided rare cosmetics to those who donated to the charity. However, to do that, you had to join a private Discord to find a link for a Twitch stream, go to that stream, and then donate directly to the streamer. Someone that this small community knows has been a responsible member and shoutcaster for years, but to an outsider is just some random guy asking them for $5 and their Steam account name. That they've raised over $4,000 is inspiring and noble, but imagine how much better it could have gone if more people felt secure and confident in participating. That Discord server highlights the next issue, the impossibility of finding information clearly. While researching this video, I've become one of the more knowledgeable outsiders about this particular subcommunity of this tiny niche of a game, and yet I cannot readily tell you where to find any piece of information other than suggesting you use the search bar on Discord and just have precise search terms. For a newbie who has no investment, that is simply unacceptable. Both of the Discords used in the modded realm are confusingly laid out, filled with old information mixed with the new, and have competing interests lobbying for your attention with their @everyone's. This is made even worse by the fact that the community often collates modded with Onslaught, and Onslaught itself is the term of the mod. It just devolves falls into an unsearchable mess. All of this is easily fixed by having a single website. Simply point people there, a couple instructions on what to download and how to get in. Even videos and links to important information. Instead of donating to a streamer, you can add a charity widget, which feels much safer. My question is, can these things be implemented without a leader? Only time can tell, but I certainly hope they do. If modded Vermintide looks like something you would enjoy, join the modded community server, hosted by Isolator. You will find channels geared explicitly towards new players, where they can ask questions and more experienced players respond quickly. This video was recommended to me by Osmium, a Patreon patron of mine. I am incredibly thankful for his level of support and his willingness to introduce me to this world and answer hundreds of my questions. Thanks to all of my patrons who allow me to explore this kind of content and provide it to you. If you'd like to help support me, consider becoming a patron today, and I'll see you on the next one.